I've seen a lot of crazy things posted on Instagram and YouTube, etc., about the first move in the backswing. Now, I've had gears for a long time. I had it at my golf school at Doral, my golf school in Texas, and we have one here at the Biltmore. So a lot of people think they just invented something by watching a few tour players and gears on what happens in the backswing. What's the first move in the backswing? And I call that step one. And I'm going to show you a few pieces that I've written. We'll post them on this YouTube video. You could pause the video, take a look at it, read it from my first 8-step swing book that I really wrote in the 1980s. It came out in 1991. I've updated it with a couple updates on the 8-step swing, and also in my latest book, Build Your Swing. And I've looked at 2 positions that we look at in the beginning of the golf swing. Now, I didn't need gears to look at what's happening in the first part of the golf swing because of using videotape correctly by filming exactly the same way as I was taught by Carl Welty. And Carl and I did a huge amount of research in the late 70s, early 80s. And then as I built my own golf schools, I had a whole bunch of teachers and assistants. And each year, especially when I was at Doral, we would film all the players and look at least 100 players and look at what was going on in the golf swing with video. Now, when you look at a golf swing from face on, the way you're looking at this clip right here, you can see movement. Now, if I turned around and went from the back view, it would look different. If you use gears, they look at the center point, the center of mass in the middle of your body. But let's just look at it from the face-on view right here. This is lower center, your center of mass. I sometimes say the belt. And then upper center here at the sternum. Now, again, if you look at this from different angles, you'll get different ideas of what's really happening. In the first movement of the golf swing, step 1A, the first move is the forward press, the movement of the body slightly forward or the hands slightly forward, something that goes toward the target. I'm not going to detail that. You can read Build Your Swing. There's a lot of stuff in there about this, and I'm certainly not going to cover everything going on in the first part of the golf swing, but I'm going to go over a lot. Now, the first movement as you take the golf club away, as I described early on, is the move to the side, laterally, sideways movement. And a lot of you out there think about rotating the hips and just turning the hips. When you try to turn around a pivot point, you have to choose either your right leg or left leg that hit the ground because your spine doesn't hit the ground. When you try to just rotate, keep your head in one position and just turn, you're going to see the right hip move away from a line drawn on the right leg. So that would look more like a pure rotation, and that oftentimes leads to a weight going toward the left post, the left leg, like this. So that kind of rotation. It can also lead to your head going toward the target, so then you really get into a classic reverse pivot. Now, from watching great players and playing with great players and working with some of the greatest players in the history of the game, I knew all of them talked about keeping the club between the arms, and I'm talking about a full golf swing now, not a pitching wedge or a 9-iron, but let's go to a 5-iron through the driver. I've got a 5-wood right here that I'll hit for you. But that movement, as you start away, if you can start things in one piece where the club stays between your arms as you take it away, and you get that feeling that the shift happens early. And this is something I taught all the players that I've worked with my entire life in teaching. The movement away, that you're loading into the back post. You don't want to go left post. 2 points hit the ground. If you're going to turn on something, you can't turn on 2 points that hit the ground. You've got to choose which side you're going to pivot into to hit a long shot, how you're going to load the gun, and that's your move into the trail side. So that's, for me, working with, again, Ken Venturi was a huge influence for me. Jimmy Ballard was terrific. He really talked about that sideways movement. But we know now, watching these great players and using gears and other modern equipment, they can measure this stuff to see exactly what's happening. But you don't need to do that. you can see it if you know what you're doing and you know how to film and you know what to look for and you study it enough. So when I look at this belt movement, lower center, it's not going to just turn around this point right here. It's going to move. And it's going to move a little to the right and then also around. So it's a little curved motion, and that loads up my right side. I think it's great to think of loading the inside part of the thigh so you can feel the biceps that are in your thigh, that you're going to create tension there. As you go back and start this early movement, there's not a lot of straightening here early on. That's, again, a lot of the teachers, not a lot, some teachers are talking about, straightening up right away. Well, that can lead to getting too high and locking here early and not getting that full movement that you need, the early shift to the right side. This movement right here as you go through step one in the golf swing. Step one is only 3 feet off the golf ball. Just this part right here. And now you're either starting to load right here early, or you might be a person that gets into this section of the swing and then you try to load late. Well, I'm not going to go through, I will in future YouTube videos. I will talk about when you change direction, when you move to the front post, but I put some really cool stuff in here for you to look at from different books that I've written. I wrote the Hogan book, The Complete Hogan, in 2009, and that's when it came out. And I showed people and detailed how Hogan moved. He actually had a little drag, which a lot of great players also had, like Jack Nicklaus, for example, that there was actually a little bit of movement with the hands, maybe even slightly before the club. And that's when they were getting into the trail side early. So as we get into this early part, that's when you're moving. As you get into position 2, which is halfway back, you're almost fully loaded. By position 3, you are fully loaded, and then there's going to be the change of direction. But let's focus on this misconception of what's happening here early on in the swing. If we look at upper center, these two centers move over and stack the right side. Again, something I've written about a decade ago or longer back, where I've talked about you load the right side, you stack the right side. You definitely don't stack the left side. And we know that that was taught for a while, which, for a lot of people that couldn't hit the ground, that was a pretty good thing, because with short irons for sure, you can get your divots forward. I'm not saying it's all bad, but I am talking about what really happens on a PGA Tour player when they're hitting the ball forever and hitting it in an athletic motion. And they wind up the loading of throwing a rock, loading up to hit a baseball, to take an axe and hit the tree. You're definitely not going to go this way and backwards to hit a tree. It's simply you're not going to do that. So this part of the golf swing, the very first part of the golf swing, was called Crossroads Number 1 by Ben Hogan, who wrote beautifully about the golf swing. And every top teacher that I know has studied Ben Hogan. Now I think I've studied it more. I've done a video with the Golf Channel about Hogan, a long video, and I've spent a lot of time with the people that played with Hogan and practiced with Hogan and knew Ben Hogan. And I think that's pretty important. And that helped me understand to watch videotape and see these movements. Once again, I teach from in the front where the camera is. I'm looking that way when I teach you, when I give lessons, thousands of lessons in my life. I'm not down on the ground. I don't stand behind the player. And certainly when they look at themselves in the mirror to study their swing, or they film themselves, they're going to be looking at this angle. Now there's a lot of things I can show you from the back angle of what the club's doing and how it's moving and how we're getting up on plane. But in this video, I'm talking to you about loading up in this first part of the swing as you start to load into the back leg, the back foot. We're not going to go again to the toe ever. That would be a terrible mistake. You're going to shift over, and I've said on top of the right foot. I think sometimes thinking of loading into the left foot, people tend to lean a little too far forward. I think on top of the right foot, the weight's starting to move toward the right heel. It's starting to draw back, just like your belt's drawing back. Your right leg, your right hip, from that view, when I watch players, that hip stays in position. If you rotate right away, the hip moves away. If you slide too much, it moves outward. That's not good either. But I will say this, there are a lot of great players, a lot, who go slightly to the outside of the right foot. Especially in transition, there might be a little movement to the outside and inside. Again, that's getting pretty complicated. But remember this, put your weight early to here. You feel the shift as the club's moving to the right. For a right-hander, my weight's moving to the right. Why would I want my weight going the opposite direction? Or just freezing over the ball and just taking my arms back? We're trying to keep the club between our arms. We're trying to load the chest and the lower body, maintain some flex in this right leg. The knee's gonna move, folks. It happens, it moves in here. The leg's gonna extend. That's great. I just don't want it to lock, frozen. I don't really see too many people do that in the history of golf. You look at the greatest players in the world right now, Dustin Johnson or Brooks Koepka, certainly Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, all maintained some flex in this trail knee. So knee moves, yes. There's rotation, yes. I go on top of the right foot, yes. I load weight here early, yes. I don't wait here and then go to the top and load late. I see that movement to the side early. Okay, as I mentioned, you got to film perfect to do this. Straight on, perfect angles. But you'll be able to see Justin Thomas hitting a driver here. And you see the lateral loading. Take a good look. He's got a little lag, as I talked about in the video. That's a PGA top tour player in the world movement. This is a video we shot during the World Championship at Doral. I don't know if I can be more clear than that. So if you enjoyed this little excursion into the first part of the backswing, push the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video tape.